the last couple of weeks, we've talked about day 1 to day 12 and all of the specific points that need to go into each of those days to help patients understand the principle of chiropractic so that therefore they can make the choice to convert to care. So even though they may have entered your office from symptom relief, they're learning and being inspired by you and your team and your mission on not choosing symptomatic relief, but choosing corrective spinal neurological chiropractic care for now to get to the root cause of their problem for the rest of their life for them and their family. And a lot of those little specific things we talk to have to go into this. So I mentioned to Dr. Brian when we were talking today is that we want to build on that and we want to take what was really taught and what you guys learned at the most recent seminar, the Max Living seminar, to bring that into the group and say, okay, how can we expand on that? And the thinking is, and this was a great comment on a recent coaching call, was you have to ask yourself, there's different levels of what you're trying to relay to the patient, what information you're trying to relay to the patient when that patient first makes the decision to come into your office. And that can be right from the first phone call. So before you physically met them, you have to make a decision. Are you trying to get them to like you? Are you trying to get them to come in to your office? Are you trying to get them to become adjusted? Are you trying to get them to convert to a care plan? Or are you trying to help them make a decision that chiropractic care is a lifestyle decision for them and their family for the rest of their life? And whatever your answer is to that will determine what specific ways you communicate with the patient and how you train your team to communicate with a patient. So your outcome will determine the steps you put into place to train the team to the level you want them to train. Okay. So what I'd like to do is turn it over to Dr. Brian and Dr. Stephen, who were just at the seminar, to share what they've talked about and what they learned and bring this to the group.
So I apologize for any background noise. Seems the whole family wants to be on the level I'm at.
That is okay. That's a high volume chiropractor.
I mean, you asked me to share, and I'm like, man, it is hard to distill down a seminar weekend into a few minutes of sharing because there's so much good stuff. But one of the things that one of the speakers talked about, several of them talked about, was the levels of speaking. So there's sharing information, there's teaching people, then there's leading people, and mobilizing. We want to get to the point of mobilizing. And we can't mobilize everyone, but if we can mobilize 10% of the people in our practice to go out and change their health, to bring people in as well, then we are down the path towards the highest level as a group called revolutionize. And so they talked about not being there yet, but heading towards that. One of the most impactful parts of the seminar for me was hearing Jill LaMarche's story. So for those of you guys who don't know who Jill LaMarche is, he's president of Life. And he shared about when he was 48 years old. He was in practice kind of suffering with some what he thought was allergies until one day his secretary said, like, took him and was crying, was like, I'm afraid you're going to die. And he, like, please go get checked out. And he got checked out, and he was given a terminal diagnosis that he would die in 24 months of a heart issue. His heart had expanded to 2.5 times its normal size. And so he went through the whole process of basically doing up his will, planning out his funeral, all this kind of stuff, because they gave him an option of a surgery that they said might give him 5 good years. And when he asked what 5 good years is, the doctor said, you'll be alive. And so there's no hope given, of course. And he went home and talked to his family about it. And they're like, he's like, I don't think I want to do the surgery. And all 3 of his kids at the same time said, then don't. And so he continues on preparing for his eventual death. It's going to become around 49 years old. And he wakes up one day and he has this realization, like, oh my gosh, I haven't been properly checked out. I've been adjusted, but I haven't been properly under a care plan by any chiropractor since basically I started my practice. And so he called up his old practice that he sold, and the secretary's still there. And he said, book me in as a new patient. And he got all checked out. And sure enough, C7 to T4 was a total mess. And so he started care under 5 times a week. And within a couple of years, his heart shrunk back down to normal size. He lost the diagnosis. He's now 71 years old. He's been doing masters races all around the world. And it was so inspiring to hear that whole story about how chiropractic, saved his life. And I think sometimes we kind of forget that, especially when patients are coming in with pain we got the pressure of the boards and all this kind of stuff to play small, but we are literally out there to save lives, and you get that re-inspiration, that refire, that the reignition of passion when we go to these bigger events and we hear these speakers and stuff like that. I think that's some of the biggest takeaways. And then another thing that kind of dovetails off of that is, Tony Evo was there. He was talking about pediatric care, and he talked about it as well too, that bigger care plans create better neurological outcomes, right? Like when Jill LaMarche was going through his terminal diagnosis, when he finally went, I'm going to get under chiropractic care, he went 5 times a week, right? He wasn't going, oh, once a week and taper down to once every 2 weeks for wellness. Like, no, he hit it hard and it saved his life, right? So I don't know how much you want me to share. There's definitely more going on there, but yeah, those are a couple of the key takeaways that I got from the weekend.
And a big piece was Jill. Like he'd been adjusted the entire time,
Yeah,
but he never had like testing as to what's really wrong. Like being, if you know who Jill is, he knows like all the most powerful chiropractors around. So he'd be getting adjusted every week, but by a different doc every time, that sort of stuff. So again, it's the specificity in what we do, and it's that principle behind it. Um, but like Steve was saying, and how this I think dovetails in is I didn't get to attend as much of seminar as Stephen did, just with board meetings. I had a separate meeting with Jill, just talking about the profession as well. And one thing that shocked me just heading into the weekend was that what the numbers show out there right now is there is more chiropractors retiring from the profession than there is chiropractors entering the profession. So if there was ever a time that we needed high volume, principle, corrective based docs, it's now. And if you don't have that figured out, not only is that going to be bad for your practice, it's bad for humanity because people won't have access to this. So there's lots of things we got to figure out as a profession to get going the right direction. But to dovetail, I think, as to what turns into this training, what piggybacking off what Steven said, the biggest thing I got from this and that mindset piece is you need to figure out like what is the ideal you are fighting for. So why are you actually in practice? Why do you show up into that office? What's the ideal you're fighting for? And then that passion has to come into your day one and your phone calls and your adjustments and your re-exams and your table talk, et cetera, et cetera. That ideal. So when Colin asks a question, like when someone calls, what is it that you want for them? Like for me, it's that they will retire from the medical model. They will retire from the medical model because they want something different. They want this thing called health, which is not in medicine. Medicine's great for crisis, but they like what are they doing to get onto that part? And that really comes back to your mindset, your mission behind it, because if you look out there, like missions, three things. There's a problem, which is close to 1 million people die every year because of the medical model, right? We all know that's our number one killer. It's 6 jumbo jets going down every single day. And if people understand that, if we knew 6 jumbo jets going down every day, would people be flying everywhere, right? The solution is the principle of chiropractic. That's your office. And then there's the why something needs to be done. And it's simple. It's just wrong. And so you got to figure out where you stand in that gap. What are you doing? This isn't to just have a business, to feel cool, to build an ego, but what's the thing you want to be remembered for when your time here ends?
I think one of the really cool parts about tying that all in is that maybe not a cool part, but learning the injustice of that medical model as well too at the seminar, from a personal standpoint as well too, and it sucks. But like Herb talked about the corral of like he had this wake up vision of a cow in a chute on its way to the slaughterhouse kind of thing, and he talked about how um, people are before they enter the medical model, it's like a cow in a wide open field, right? And how do you get cows into the line for slaughterhouse? You keep making their area smaller and smaller and smaller. And he talked about how I just had to take that Tylenol. Well, did you? Did you have to take the Tylenol? Well, I had a bad headache, right? Did you have to do it though? And then you go to a doctor about something. I had to get the surgery. Did you have to? And you keep getting corralled smaller and smaller and smaller, until the point where you're on death's door because of this model. 6 jumbo jets going down every single month. And it was personal as well too, because Herb talked about his father-in-law committing suicide because he went down the medical path for some shoulder issues, shoulder surgery, medications, and then that led to suicidal ideation and and death. And then Greg Loman opened up talking about his dad. The same thing happened, right? He had some sleep issues, got put on a sleeping pill that led to some anxiety. So anxiety medication, he had to take it, right? So he thought. To depression medication because he started getting depression from anxiety medication. And we all know that depression medication leads to things like suicidal ideation. It's one of the main side effects of many of the depression medications. So of course he did the same thing fairly recently. You know, he was left alone for half an hour while his wife went for a walk, and he found a gun and put it to his head in Greg's house and pulled the trigger. And not to like bring this call down, but like we sometimes have to get stirred up about the injustice of that system that corrals people down towards the path of destruction, and really go out and get passionate and like you said, rip people out of that medical model and get them to think differently.
And it's just because no one told them there was another way. They thought they had no options.
Exactly. Yeah, they have to do this. You have to do that. You don't have to.
So this is huge, you guys, in the fact that we can talk about all of the systems and the hows of each day, day 1, day 2, day 3. How do you do a re-exam? How do you do this? What do you say here? What do you say there? But it all comes back to the fact that if you don't own the principle of what we deliver, everything falls apart and nothing is sustainable. And I'm going to tell you, so when you talk about Jill Lamarche, you know, I've known Jill for about 30 years. He was on the board when I was first into practice and dealt with a few issues with him. So I've known him for a long time. And I did a podcast with Jill, and he talked about the exact story that you just mentioned, Stephen. But here's one thing I want to impress upon you guys in that the way that Jill talks about that, it was a life-changing thing when he finally committed to his own health. So in other words, all the years that he was telling patients on how to care for themselves, get under chiropractic care, get your family under chiropractic care, he wasn't doing it for himself. And I'm going to tell you, I want you guys to take a look in the mirror because that's exactly what we do as chiropractors. And I guarantee you, everybody on this line can improve what you're doing as far as your own health and your family's health. And I want you to ask yourself, when you put a new patient on a care plan and you talk to them about their home care and you talk to them about their adjusting schedule and you set up re-exams for them and you look at their x-rays and maybe you do a weighted x-ray or a re-x-ray and you adjust them very specifically, are you doing that for your own children? Are you doing that for your own loved ones, your own family members? And I guarantee you that none of you are to the level that you should be or the level that you talk to your patients at. And I'm going to say that until you commit to that, your practice will never, ever be at the level you want it to. Never. Because it's an integrity thing. It's a way of really truly owning and believing what it is you deliver. So until you can actually look in the mirror, and you know, Gilles, when he talks about his story, he said, I was flying by the seat of my pants, getting adjusted sporadically. There was no schedule, but until I committed to become, and he terms a practice member, until I committed to become a practice member, where I totally submitted to a doctor that I trusted and followed every step that he told me as far as schedule and care and what I should be doing. And he said, I didn't miss care. And that's when his health turned around. So I'm going to say to you guys is look in the mirror first, commit to becoming a good patient, the patient that you want to care for you and your family. And when you do that, watch what happens to your practice, because now you can talk with confidence and integrity because you're living it, you're doing it, and everything turns around. And I can tell you that from 100% experience. 100% experience, we finally committed to caring for our kids the way we wanted to care for practice members. And that's one of the reasons we built an incredibly family practice, because we made it mandatory for kids to get checked. And I always say it like not in a rigid or militant way, but it was like, this is exactly what we do for our family. And we've had incredible success. We own it. We believe it. This is how we live. If you don't like it, you can go somewhere else. And we totally owned that concept. And when we finally owned it and didn't really care what anybody thought, that's when everything turned around. That's when everything just exploded in our practice. And because I didn't care who signed on. We would go in and just tell the principal unfiltered. I did not care if anybody spent $1 in our office. And if they walked out the door, that was okay with me. But when we did it, it was amazing what happened. It was like a total reverse psychology, if you will. It was like the floodgates opened up. So, and that's what I'm going to say to you guys is start living chiropractically with integrity. Do everything that you talk to your patients about doing. And when you start doing that, your practice will explode.
And sorry, I don't have my camera on. I've been on call since 8:30, so I'm gonna make something for myself to eat at the same time. But just jumping in on that, like you'll notice, Corey saw a huge transformation when he finally went and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna be serious about mine." Kevin, I know you're on. I talked to you after you and your wife went to Nalda's place for the first time and got real serious about like we're gonna work on us as well. I know fired up and how that translates back into your practice until you take chiropractic and your health as serious for yourself as you want your patients to, like Colin said, there's that congruency issue and it never lines up. There's always that struggle. And I even know real simple, like I can see a difference in my office when I do my home care and I don't talk to patients about it. But when I'm doing it, more patients are doing it. When I'm not doing it, more patients have issues with it. There's this fourth dimension piece that happens.
So, because obviously, because it's our mastermind call, I'd love to have the opportunity for you guys to be involved and add things to this and, ask questions. The last two calls, we've talked about day 1 through day 12. And I'm going to say to you, for those of you, because I know a couple of you on this line here were not on those calls. For those of you who haven't watched the recordings or were not present on those calls, or even if you were present, go back and watch the recordings, take a good look at them and start analyzing what you're doing in your practice and what's missing. Because I can tell you, all the little points that we talked about from day 1 to day 12, many of them are 100% necessary to build a great practice. As long as you come from congruency and integrity and passion of what you're delivering, you can't not succeed if you put those things into place. So I'm going to ask you guys, first of all, what's missing? What's missing in your practice? Where are you struggling? Or on the other hand, where are you seeing great success that you want to share with the rest of the group?
Hi, Colin. I was chatting with Brian earlier, and part of the area where I'm struggling is I actually haven't like owned the communication of the doctor care plan. I've been kind of playing a role in letting that happen by another staff member. So what I want to do is get to the point where I am comfortable communicating the process and just handing off the mechanics to the staff member. And also speaking about the whole situation of you know being immersed and living the principle. I should get back on the situation. This week, I'm going to get some updated X-rays and start doing my home care.
That's awesome, Blake. Blaine, that's that this is so vital, when you start talking about that. And again, just you yourself engaging in that, engaging in your home care and being able to talk with more confidence on what you're delivering in the office, like then it becomes a no-brainer. And I'm going to say, here's the thing is that if you can be so certain in what you do is so important, subluxation and medication, the two biggest killers on the planet. I own that. I've owned that for years and years and years. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if you call me a quack. I don't care, because it's a disconnection from God's purpose for your life. That's really what it is. Subluxation and medication disconnect the spiritual from the physical. That's really what it is. And I know that. And I don't care. Like, I'll share that with everybody. And so by adjusting the spine, we open up that pathway, we reconnect the brain and body, we open up the nerve pathway, the neurological integrity of that person so that they can be connected spiritually and physically. And that's really the most important purpose of chiropractic. And I would tell anybody that. And once you start to own that, and I don't care what anybody thinks, then your practice just turns around. Like, I mean, it's amazing. And then you can go to somebody and say, you have subluxation. It's disconnecting your spiritual from your physical. It's totally compromising your neurological integrity. It's the root cause of all of your health concerns. And if we don't get that corrected, your body slowly disintegrates, it becomes dysfunctional, and it dies. And so for this correction to happen, it's 12 to 18 months. Here's our care plan. Are you committed to getting it better and getting it corrected, or are you not? And then I'm happy enough to be able to walk away. And if they say yes, great. If they say no, that's okay too.
I think one of the things that from our calls and from the seminar that I'm committing to as well is to update my doctor's report. It's been a couple of years of it staying pretty similar, but I think some of it has like I've lost some of that passion and sharing about, like the six jumbo jets, that kind of thing. And so I've got some time blocked out this weekend to sit down and work on really honing in on that doctor support, working like mastering the craft of delivering a great doctor support.
And I would encourage everyone to get, like, there's always these great intentions, but the definition of traction is when your activities are actually moving something. So I know I've talked with anyone I coach with recently, like there's a lot where we're doing things, we feel good about it, but if you're not tracking the movement, you don't really know if you're getting impact or not. So if you look up the definition of traction, it's when your intention is actually physically moving something. You got to measure it. It can't just be a feeling. Is it creating the outcome that I need it to, or I want it to, or I think it should? And if it is, awesome, you're on the right track. And if it's not, keep refining until you get that.
People want to follow somebody who's a good leader. And I think if you really start to find the definition for yourself is what qualities does a good leader have? And that's the person who is unwilling to represent, to do, or to say the things that everybody else is uncomfortable to represent, do, or say. So if you can get yourself to a place where you are talking about things that people just either don't want to enter into or are uncertain of or unsure of or really have no knowledge of, and if you can talk with about those things with certainty and with confidence, you gain a following, and people want to be a follower of somebody who has a vision, who's somebody who's willing to step into a place where nobody else is willing to step into. And I think if you can get yourself to that place and talk about subluxation and its devastating effects on how severe they are and how they're going to destroy people's lives and how they're going to destroy their children's lives until they're corrected, everybody understands that. When you can tell them the chiropractic story about how simple interference is disrupting their ability to express their full potential for life, people get that. They totally understand it. And many times you're going to hear, why didn't somebody tell me this before? But until you can get yourself to a place where you can talk about that confidently without any attachment to the outcome, that's when things change.
So a big thing with that, because like anyone who's been around for a long time, there are these seasons that happen. You can either choose to keep having the same problems and continue to fall off over and over again, or every time you fall off, you go back and look at, so what got me off track, what distracted me, etc. Like when I look at the people who are on fire, make the most impact, they have great lives outside of chiropractic, but there's a way they stay anchored to chiropractic as well. So you want to be looking at that. So how to get off track this time, whatever that was for you, then it's like, okay, so what would I do different next time? Or if I could go back and redo that, what would I do so I'm not off as long, or I'm not so distracted, or I'm not out doing something else with those things. The other piece, as far as pure principle calls, just so again, everyone in DC2, because you're part of DC2, gets access to the Max Living Pure Principle call. The next pure principle call is going to be Dr. Greg with four other 1,000 week chiropractors. And it's not so much about going to 1,000 a week. It's that mindset. It's that mindset behind it. So when you said that, Wilson, like that's something huge. Like get re-engaged, make your time, block off your calendars. I don't think they're recorded. You got to get on live. But these are the pieces that turn you and get you thinking and get you spizzed up. One of my big epiphanies we talked about is a board level, like what made your busiest time in practice your busiest time in practice? And I told Greg like mine was a bit different, but there was something when I got diagnosed with melanoma and I was trying to figure out what was going on. It was like I'm seeing 500 a week, but I feel way more stressed right now than I was seeing over 800. And he said something to me, and I can remember the chair I was sitting in. I can remember like what the weather was like it hit me so hard. He's like, well, let me ask you one question. Like, what's your mindset like? What's your state like right now? And I'm like, oh, this is why lower volume so much harder. It's because where I am in between my ears. So huge, huge call for anybody. Even if you want to stay at your exact same volume, how do you make that volume more impactful? How do you make that volume more fun? How do you make that volume easier?
All right, guys. Well, next week we're going to do our technical mastery call. And so we will see you then. Have a great week. Get passionate. Share it with your patients.